Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And next time you need parts for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a front strut on this 2002 Ford Escape. The strut is the same for any 2001 to 2011 Escape, although getting the wheel off may be a little different for different vehicles. We show you the driver's side. Obviously, you want to replace struts in pairs, and the passenger side is the same procedure. Tools you'll need are jack and jack stands. You'll need 10 to 19 millimeter sockets and wrenches. You'll need the ratchet, some extensions, a breaker bar or a pipe because you'll need some extra leverage on some of those nuts and bolts. Flat blade screwdriver, large hammer, a 5 millimeter Allen wrench, and a torque wrench.
First, with the vehicle on the ground, you're going to remove the 4 bolts at the top of the strut right here in the engine compartment. Use a little bit of penetrating oil. Make it a little easier to get them off. Let that sit for a minute.
These bolts should only be tightened to 35 foot-pounds, so they should come off pretty easy, and they are 14 millimeter.
Okay, now using a jack, raise the vehicle up off the ground, putting the jack right underneath the front control arm, and then make sure you put a safety jack stand underneath the frame rail there.
Next, remove the wheel and tire. If you don't have the benefit of air tools, loosen the lug nuts while the wheel is still on the ground, then raise and support the vehicle and remove the tire the rest of the way.
Now we're going to have to remove this bolt here, okay, which allows these brackets to just kind of move to the side. We'll need an Allen wrench and a wrench to remove this bolt that holds the stabilizer link. Okay, and then there's 2 large bolts here that we need to remove.
Again, coat everything with penetrating oil and let them sit for a while. Okay, and here I'll use a little fast motion as I remove that. The bolt that holds the bracket in place is a 10 millimeter, and it can be a little difficult, and in fact you may break it on some vehicles. If you do break it, you'll have to just source a similar bolt from the hardware store. Okay, one thing I didn't go over, there is a clip that holds the brake line in. Just use a large screwdriver and pry that clip out. It comes out pretty easily. And then move the brake line down and out of your way. Okay, now this is probably about the most difficult part. I've got a 14 millimeter wrench on the nut that connects the stabilizer to the strut. Then I take another wrench, connect it to it, and that gives me some extra leverage, and I can start the nut spinning. And then as you get it looser, usually the stud that's part of the stabilizer link will start spinning as well. You can see here I take the 5 millimeter Allen wrench and put it into the stud in the stabilizer, and you're going to work it in there really well. It's usually kind of rusted in there. Maybe take a small screwdriver, clean it out a little bit, really work that Allen wrench in there well, and then hold the stud with the Allen wrench. Okay, and this is where it gets difficult. If you have torch or a Sawzall, I could recommend that you cut the stabilizer link stud and then just put a new one in, but most of the time you want to save that. So basically what you do is you loosen the nut up as much as you can while you're holding the Allen wrench, and once you can't loosen it anymore, then you tighten it back up, spray it with penetrant again, loosen it up again, tighten it up, spray it with penetrant, keep loosening it, and I probably did this a total of probably about 15 to 20 times and finally worked the lock nut all the way off. Okay, so now we're on to the large bolts that hold the strut at the lower end. You can see I have an 18 millimeter socket, and I'm actually using a pipe and a ratchet pipe gives me some extra leverage. And what I do is I position the wrench right up against the vehicle and then pull with the pipe. Okay, and then we'll fast forward here as I use my impact wrench, put it on there, and get that bolt off the rest of the way. Okay, here on the second bolt, you're going to see the bolt actually breaks, and that's probably going to happen just about half the time with these. Okay, use a hammer and a punch to start driving the bolts out, and then you can let down the jack. That releases most of the pressure off the strut, and then the bolts will come out, and then you remove the strut.
Okay, so here is our original strut, and you can see that the spring is actually broken. This vehicle was making a clunking noise whenever you turn the wheel, and sometimes when you started out and stopped. Okay, here's our new strut from 1A Auto. The spring is assembled. Okay, it's got all the right brackets and everything on it. Just going to remove the nuts from the top here.
Okay, so now we're going to take the new strut, make sure that the bracket that goes around the steering knuckle is pointing out, put it down through between the tie rod and the lower control arm, and then bring it up into place and kind of get the lower mount set on the steering knuckle, so it kind of is now roughly in place. And now you can go up top and just take your nuts, and if you need to, you can jack up the jack a little bit, but just get those 4 studs on top in place, put those nuts on, and then just kind of preliminarily tighten them up. You'll torque them later. Okay, and from here on out, it's pretty much a reverse of the procedure. You can see I lift the steering knuckle up and kind of work it into position and get both of the bolts through the strut and into the steering knuckle, and then put on washers and lock nuts. And obviously, because one of them broke, I'm using 2 brand new bolts. And now here I'm jacking the car back up to put the weight back onto the suspension. Tighten and torque these bolts to 85 foot-pounds.
Torque these upper bolts to 35 foot-pounds.
And just speed up as I do those last 2. Okay, and now I'm going to put the stabilizer link back together. It goes back together a lot easier than it comes apart. Needless to say, or regardless, I just use a little bit of penetrating oil on there anyways. Then use the 5mm Allen wrench and the 14mm wrench and tighten it up. And it does go a lot faster when you're at about 7 times speed too. And now put the bracket back in place and put that 10mm bolt. Again, if that bolt broke, use a it's probably about an M8 self-tapping bolt that just kind of bolts into the strut, and then put the brake line back in place. Use a small hammer to tap the clip in place, and then just check, make sure nothing's rubbing or chafing on anything. Now put your wheel and tire back in place, put the lug nuts on, and just kind of tighten them preliminarily. You want to torque them once the vehicle's back on the ground and secured. Set your torque wrench to 100 foot-pounds and then tighten them up using a star pattern as the order, and then put your cap back in place. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.1aauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.